So as you're starting, making an event of like, I'm going to go do game is actually a good thing because it forces you to do it, right? But once you are actually going out and approaching girls and it's becoming normal to you, what you actually want as your end goal is that you're just a guy that in your life, when you see a girl that interests you, you can go right then. You don't need a warm up, you don't need the practice and all that kind of stuff, right? One of the best ways to do that is to make your practice sporadic throughout the week as opposed to all on the weekends or all in one venue, right? So if, for example, you go out on Friday and Saturday nights and doing night game, if you were to just add in half an hour on a Tuesday to just go do day game, that would make day game more normal for you. It would make game in your normal life more normal for you, all those kind of things. So that's just a good idea, right? Also, not having as big of a gap between sessions is better for developing habits. But a lot of what you're talking about, it sounds like you have a little bit of an ego about game still, right? Yeah. So specifically that thing where you said, once I have a really good approach one day, I don't want to do it the next day. That means that you're seeing yourself as the guy who did that approach, right? And so maybe you have an ego about yourself in terms of your attractiveness, or maybe you have an ego about your game. It could be either or, but it's definitely an egoic thing, right? It's definitely that. And so you want to think of your life as this timeline where you're going to do thousands of approaches potentially, or you're going to at least have thousands of potential girls that you could meet, whatever your means of meeting girls is. And one of those is just one data point, and it could have happened this day, or it could have happened a year later, or a year earlier, or 5 days later, 5 years. It's all just random, and you want to think of yourself as like you're in control and out of control at the same time. Does that make sense? It's very random, and so you don't know what your results will be day to day, right? You talk to a girl today and she has a boyfriend, that's not your fault. You talk to the girl tomorrow and she doesn't have a boyfriend, you could have done worse game on the girl that didn't have a boyfriend and gotten a better result, right? So statistically, every single set is random, but 1,000 sets is very predictable. Like the net result of 1,000 sets is very predictable. Does that make sense? Or 100 or whatever, right? So it's your job is to do good game and do it enough that it has a chance to pay off, right? And you should understand that you're supposed to get some amazing results and supposed to get some rejections. And getting a rejection doesn't make you're not suddenly a different person after getting rejected than you were before. You're not suddenly a different person after having sex with a beautiful girl than you were the day before. You are still fundamentally the same person, right? And you will occasionally sleep with a really hot girl when your game's not as good, and then you'll go through a dry spell when your game is better. Doesn't mean your game suddenly was better before or something like that, right? So you have to understand that there is that randomness, and judge yourself. This is the very important thing. Judge yourself by what you did, not by what came of what you did. So if I do a good approach and the girl just doesn't like it, like if I'm like legitimately charismatic and clever and witty and charming and the girl just doesn't appreciate it, I'm like, she has no taste. You know, whatever, what can I do, right? Whereas if I do a half-assed approach and the girl doesn't like it, I'm like, yep, that's me, right? I've even done that. Like, you know how in sports, if you score an own goal in football or whatever, you're like, yep, that was me, guys, right? I actually did one of those. I was being filmed and I like really, really messed up. I like just did like a bunch of things wrong and there was no way it would possibly go. And then I could have pursued the set further, but it was just, I knew I'd done it wrong. I was like, yep, that was me. I'm sorry. Yep. I was like, yep, that was me. I messed up. I give up. Go have a nice day, ma'am. Right? And that's as fine as far as it goes. But the point is to judge yourself based on what you did and make your criteria for success and criteria for your own happiness based on what you did, not based on what the girl gave you. Because what the girl gave you is random and out of your control. And if you can do that, if you can make your goal when you're going out to do good game that you can be proud of and talk to the girls you genuinely like, if that's your goal, then you can achieve that goal every single night. That makes sense? So as much as you can be internally validated by the fact that you did well rather than externally validated by the fact that it went well. That should be where your focus is. All right? So the more you can shift your focus to that, the more you can make your an internal locus of control. The other thing too, and this is for everybody, especially beginners, but for everybody, almost every single approach you do, afterwards you can categorize it as a success or a failure. Basically any approach where you didn't sleep with a girl for sure, right? Or didn't get into a relationship or whatever. Even if like you sleep with her, you wanted a relationship, you didn't get there, that could be a failure too, technically. Any single approach you do, you could categorize as a success or a failure. And it's up to you what you're gonna do. If you're constantly categorizing it as a failure, game is gonna suck. And game is gonna be hard. And game is gonna be like daunting and scary. But if you're constantly finding the way that it was a success, then the game's going to be fun, right? So if you have, if you consistently are able to get 30-second conversations, you talk to a girl and it lasts a minute, you can say that's a success. It lasted longer than it usually does. Or you can say that's a failure because you didn't sleep with me. Or that's a failure because I didn't get a number, right? It's both. Both are true. It is a success and a failure at the same time. But the question is, which are you going to categorize it as, and which is more helpful to you at this point in your game, at this point in your learning, right? So on a deep level, love yourself and give yourself the feedback that's going to be most helpful to you, whatever that is, rather than the feedback that's not helpful to you. And that changes at various points.